okay. All right. You didn't come on the teal with us, but you still get a page. Okay. Boker Tov. This is an engraving, as it says here. I think it's from Amsterdam, but I'm not sure exactly who the artist is. What do you see here?
Continent?
The continents, right. Europe, Asia, and Africa. Jerusalem is at the center. This is the way the world was looked at. It's very interesting. Which continent is missing?
America.
It's not actually missing. If you look, brand new, in 1581, people were still discovering that there's, what's it called? Terra Nova. You see that bottom left corner? Terra Nova.
South America.
Terra means land, Nova means new. The new land. America, the not South America, North America, was just being discovered at that time. The world exists of Europe, Asia, and Africa. Israel finds itself right in the center, the nexus of... Excuse me? Maybe at the top you could see something. I can't read what it says, but maybe they knew about it, and I'm not sure they did. But Greenland seems to be there. I don't know exactly what the story is, what's on top there. But the civilized world essentially had Israel at its core. It is, in many ways, the uniting point, the link between Europe, Asia, and Africa in Jerusalem, in Eretz Yisrael. Unfortunately, the page had some timeline on the bottom, but it got cut off. Who has the first original copy, so I can get it back?
1581?
The one that has on this side, there's some dates. No, on the bottom, there's some dates. Who has the dates that are not cut off? Someone has that. Yisrael has it? Ah, there you go. Okay. So I'll give you this one. And that way future students can... it's just a sort of timeline of what happens, but we know enough about timelines. Okay? So the top, what does it have at the top? It's a midrash. You see at the top it says midrash. Do you need one, Zachariah? Here, you can share. You can take this one. That's what I mean to say. And I'll share with you this one. The top says, the Midrash Tanchuma, it says, Eretz Yisrael. Who can read it for me? Not everybody's expected to know the Hebrew here. Yeah. Still small. The top left-hand side. Eretz Yisrael. Be'emtza. Yes. The land of Israel is in the middle of the world. Everybody see where I'm reading? Yeah. Second line now. Shmuel, take over. So Jerusalem is in the middle of the land of Israel. And the last line, Eov, Ubet HaMikdash, Kizachar, you do it. Beit HaMikdash. Third line from the top of the page. Okay. Now what I want you to do now is to turn over your page and take a pen, a piece of paper, and together with me, we're going to draw a map of the land of Israel. It's maybe the first time you're drawing a map of the land of Israel yourself, but it's the only way to learn. Do it yourself. It's very easy. It's very easy. Check it out, okay? You're going to do this on your page. Who needs a pen? Okay, so who can give him a pen? I'm offering... here's one. Yes. Pass this to Zachariah, please. Yeah. Everybody have a pen? Okay, so turn the page over. You have a blank piece of paper in front of you now? Okay. So the first thing you do is you go like this. That's it. Can you do that? Can you do that? Do that on your page. Fill up the whole page. Yeah, the page. This is the page.
We need a bit extra at the top, no?
Okay, a little more at the top, but yeah. Right. So perhaps make the page leave a little space at the top. Okay, look behind you. You see? That's the coastline. You see the coastline? See the little dip? Pretty good. Then what you need to do is pretty much parallel to the western side. By the way, this is what we call today Haifa, right? Where Shmuel used to live, right? Haifa is the correct pronunciation. I apologize. It's a very mixed city, and it's a beautiful city in the land of Israel. Baruch Hashem. Everybody good with me so far? You are all right in English if you like. Some people call it Haifa with a H, but most Israelis pronounce it with a Ch. You can put the dot on top to show you that. Or some people do Haifa. Haifa. Okay? Chay. It's the het sound. Haifa or Haifa. Okay? That's all we did was draw one line. Everybody got the one line? You with me? Yeah, Yisrael, you drew the map? You ready? You have half the map. Now, for the other half, it's very simple. Parallel to Haifa, you draw a teardrop shape, sort of like this.
Avocado?
Yeah, avocado, exactly. An avocado. You can see what we're trying to do on the board there. You see, that's the lake called Kinneret. We were swimming in it just a few hours ago. Kinneret. Okay, you got the map? You drawing it, Zachariah? All right. You can put some avocado stain on the paper because you're eating your breakfast. You have probably some avocado in there. It's the shape of an avocado. Okay, then there's only one more thing. I guess that's 2/3. The last thing you have to do is draw this shape that looks like an ear. Something like this over here. Did you see the Dead Sea? This is not so important. This is called Yam HaMelach, Salt Sea. In English, it's called the Dead Sea. I guess because in salty waters, it's hard to have much fish and vegetation. So everything is dead because it's so salty. You see what we're doing on the map? It's behind the plants. Somebody move the plants for me, and everybody can see the map. Put the map put the plant in the corner or something. Yeah. Thank you. You see that? Everybody can see the Dead Sea. And that's it. And then of course you have to have the Jordan River connecting it, and you've got yourself a map of Israel. Questions so far? 3 points on the map, 2 lines. You've got yourself a map of Israel. Of course, it continues down. We can't draw it all, but here there's the Sinai. The Sinai, you can't really see it on this map. For our purposes, it's not that important. But of course, the land of Israel extends downwards much further, and it comes to like a point. But you can see on the right-hand side the tiny little inserted map that from the Dead Sea you go down further and further, a nice long line, and then from Gaza it connects up to Eilat. Eilat at the bottom right-hand corner of the map over there on the wall. So you've got yourself a map. So far so good? Who can tell me, we mentioned one city of Israel. What city did we mention? What city did we already put on our map? Haifa. There's another city, you might have heard of it. We're in it. City called Jerusalem. Where is that on the map? You can look over there. You can see this big brown spot. It's the biggest city in the land of Israel. Modern state of Israel. Most populous. It's right parallel to the top of the Dead Sea, just over here, towards the middle of the country. I'll just shorten form. All right, Jalem, Jerusalem. Okay, you see where it is? What did the Midrash just tell us? Eretz Yisrael, in the middle of the entire world. We understood from the map of the ancient world, at least, the way they saw it. Asia, Africa, and Europe. Israel is the nexus of these three major land masses, ignoring America for a little while. Ignoring Australia too, no offense to anybody who's from Australia. Americans, all right. It's a conceptual map. It's not, an actual drawing. But and then it said that Jerusalem is at the center of the land of Israel. Is it correct?
Yes.
Not bad. Pretty much. A little bit low, maybe. Israel goes all the way up north towards Lebanon. Some people say that Shechem. There's two other cities I want to show you. One is Shechem, and the other one is Hebron. They're on the same line. There's a highway throughout the center of Israel, and Hebron. So you've already got 4 cities. Of course, unfortunately, the modern city of Shechem is under Palestinian control or lack of control, and modern city of Hebron is also under Palestinian chaos, except for a small part, which has the cave of the patriarchs, which we still have access to, at least somewhat. But this is our map so far. How you doing? Everybody got 4 cities? Some people say Shechem should be more the center of the country because look at the map, look at the page. It's more towards the center. But I think here too the Midrash was talking conceptually. Just like Israel's not really the center of the world, it's a globe. How could there be a center? Depends which way you look at it. But when you think about it in terms of what drives human civilization, Jerusalem is at the core, right? Same thing with Eretz Yisrael. What drives Israel? What's the core? Spiritually, Yerushalayim. It's almost true physically, right? I could almost convince you. If I didn't tell you about Shechem, you would probably have agreed with me. Sure, Jerusalem is at the center of the country.
If you go down to Elat, it's the center.
If you go all the way to Eilat.
Jerusalem is the center.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go. So maybe it's actual.
Pretty much.
On the other hand, Rav Lissman yesterday in the Tiyul was talking about Tiberia. Tiberia is over here, by the way. That's where we davened mincha. You can add a 5th city if you like. We've got so many holy cities. We've got Tiberia, the holy city, Jerusalem, the holy city, Hebron is the holy city. There's only one more that we don't have, and that's approximately over here. That's Tzefat. There's a, or Safed is the way some people pronounce it in English. Tzefat is the way we. There's 4 holy cities. There's known as 4 holy cities. This is Jerusalem, Hebron, Tzfat, and Tiberia. So they say that Jerusalem, because of the Beit HaMikdash was there, and the altar, so there's fire, 4 elements in the ancient world, right? Fire, earth, water, and wind. So water is going to be Tiberia, obviously. It's on the lake. So Tiberia is water, Jerusalem's fire. Tzfat is very high up. A lot of wind. And who's buried in Hebron? Hebron is known for the burial place, so that's earth. So these are the 4 holy cities of our country. However, what Rav Lissman was speaking about yesterday in Tiberia was saying that perhaps Tiberia comes from the word tabur. Tabur means? The navel, exactly. Tabur is where the umbilical cord gives sustenance to the fetus in his mother's womb. Tabur, Tiberia sounds like Tabur. And how could that be the center of the country? You need a bigger page. Right? It's only if you have what the other side of the Jordan River, the eastern side, then you could imagine that Tiberia is the center of the land of Israel. And it'd have to go much further north into Lebanon and Syria. Right? So far, so good?
You could also,
Yeah.
I also was like making a mushroom in my head about the belly button Tiberia. It's also like when we got cut off from Jerusalem, like cutting the umbilical cord,
Sweet.
The center of Judaism is in Tiberia.
Nice. Yeah, we at various times we were kicked out of Jerusalem, right? That's what we're preparing for these days in the lead up to the 9th of Av. Okay, I'll take care of you all. So this is what we read in the Midrash. Eretz Yisrael be'emtza olam, Yerushalayim be'emtza Eretz Yisrael. Aha, and the last, what's the third one? Ubeit HaMikdash be'emtza Yerushalayim. Soon I'm going to show you maps of Jerusalem, and we have to prepare for tomorrow. Tomorrow's a major tiyul in Jerusalem. Are you going to go to that one? Okay. Shmuel, going to stick around? You can't, working in the afternoon? Not to be missed. We're going to show you some previews. But in any case, I think the idea is conceptually. It's the center, it's the core, the spiritual center of the land of Israel is Jerusalem. Just to review, those who were on the trip and those who missed it, maybe we talked about how the Jews entered the land of Israel. They should have come from Egypt, right? They were coming from the south. They should have come up straight through the heartland. And the Meraglim, the spies, actually went. It says, Ve'avad Chevron. Kalev went up to the land, and they were supposed to go all the way up north and come all the way back down. Could be they did. We're not sure exactly. Anyways, they sinned. The Jewish people sinned. They didn't get to go into the land in this direction. Instead, they had to detour towards the east. And then they were coming up into the land of Israel from here. But here, there were three nations which they were not allowed to conquer. Edom.
Wow.
Excellent. This is the Arnon River. And here is Moab. This was the border of till somewhere around here. This was Moab. So we have Edom over here. We have Moab over here. And Hashem tells us that not to conquer Moab because they're our cousins. Edom, we weren't supposed to conquer either. We tried to pass through their land, but they didn't let us. So we had to detour around them. So we came even further east so that we could go around Edom. We continued up here. We went around Moab. We didn't actually go through Moab. We should have gone straight up here, but we didn't. We went through here. And then we got to the Arnon River. Now what happens at the Arnon River? What's the next nation? Excellent. So up here, we saw this as we were driving on the bus. The next river is called the Yabok River. Yabok River. From the Arnon to the Yabok River is, I'm going to write it, I'm not going to write it down yet, because it used to be Ammon. But what happened was, earlier in history, there were these kings who came from the north, Amorite kings, who conquered this land and pushed Ammon in this direction. Actually, Yabok has a little tributary, and that's considered to be the border. Ammon got pushed to over here. And so all this area over here was belonging to Sichon, the king of the Amorites. And this is the land, the first fight, the first battle, which the Jewish people, Moshe and the Jewish people, they conquered this land. Over here was the, I think, the capital, Heshbon, was somewhere around here, right near the Arnon River. Anyways, the Jewish people conquered this entire land. This is perhaps, this was given to later to Gad and Reuven. I don't want to mess up the chart. We've been just speaking about the other nations here. But the Amorites were conquered by the Jewish people, by Moshe and the Jewish people. And then we went even further. So we're going to continue the path. And they went above into the Gilad region. Gilad region till about here. There's another river called the Yarmukh River. And above that is the Bashan. And this includes the Golan Heights, which is now part of Israel. This is where we hang out. We hung out for 2 days, mostly. Other than the trip up and the trip down, we spent it in the Bashan. There was Og, who was a giant, who had conquered the Bashan, just like Sichon had conquered, the Amorite had conquered this area. Og conquered that area. So when the Jewish people came, they didn't have to fight against Edom, Moab, or Ammon. They avoided the trouble with their cousins. But we did get a chance to get rid of those Amorites, just like later on we're going to get rid of the Canaanites. Canaanites are in Canaan, to the west of the Jordan. We conquered all this land from the Amorites, from Sichon and from Og, Melech HaBashan. We said a cute idea, I don't know if it's true, but that Bashan is where it's the etymology of the basalt rocks that come from lava. But perhaps the word Bashan turned into Basan, and then litos means stone in Greek. So the Greeks, basalt. So the basalt stones, which are over here. We saw the black color, really black colored stone composing all of the Golan. The Golan Heights is this massive structure with this special lava, hardened lava stone called basalt. This is perhaps the name comes from Bashan, which is the original name of the geographical area. Also Gilad. Later on, we spoke about that the tribe of Menachem was on this side of the Jordan, also on that side of the Jordan, and then further up, the Yair, another son of Menachem. Menachem had Machir, who got this part, and Yair, who built cities in the Golan, and we actually were in one of the cities, perhaps, of course. We visited archaeology from 1,000 years after the story I'm telling from the Bible, but in Talmudic times, Jewish people were settling the Golan Heights as well. And it's true what Shmuel said, that above the Golan Heights, there's still more of Israel. There's what's called Etzba HaGalil. Looks like a finger. This all the way up here to Kiryat Shmona, the northernmost point of Israel. That's called the finger, because it looks like a finger pointing up. You see that in the map? Above the Golan Heights, you could still go further. The top right corner of the map over there of Israel, there's something that looks like a finger. So we've drawn a map. Can I see your maps? Can I see your maps? All right, you stayed on the western side of Jordan. Very good. Yeah. Okay. Great. Questions, comments? You have a what? A book. You have a book with maps of Israel. Wonderful. It's a great tool to have. The problem with maps is that they stay on paper. Right? And our goal is to get them into our minds and into our hearts. So that's why I have you draw your own map. Because then maybe in the process, something will sink in. Okay, now I want to learn with you a midrash about Yerushalayim. Fast forward to Yerushalayim in the Second Temple era. And this is the story that's dramatized in the movie called Agada HaChurban. Yeah, you can. I see it got cut off. Well, we'll start and we'll do the first half, and then I'll give you another page. You know what? That's silly. We won't start yet. I'm going to give you an exercise while I go make a proper photocopy. Here's an exercise for you to work on. It's Hebrew, but all the letters are there. Do you know how to do a crossword, or what's that called? Word find. Word search. All the words are here. You have to look for those words in the jumble that's above. The words can be diagonal, they can be horizontal, they can be vertical. I don't know if it's easier to find a longer one or a shorter one. Everybody has their own method. These are all words associated with the area, the time that we're living in.
The Japanese. This is Greek or Latin. Apostomus.
He burnt the Torah. We learned about that in the 17th of Tammuz, right? Okay, I'll be right back. You guys get moving on your word search. It's good to learn Hebrew. Pay attention to the letters. There's 2 Yerushalims. Excellent. Well, there was.
East and west.
No. First Beit HaMikdash times and second Beit HaMikdash times. Good. Translate them as well. You should know what word you're looking for. Yay! You got one! So now you can mark it off that you've done it. Mark it off. Every word that you find, you can give it a
The
tick.
Lot is the tablets, and the Brit is the covenant. The 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments. Yerushalayim. Twice. Ben Mitzrayim, this is like between Egypt and Yerushalayim. He said it's like left and right and diagonal. Yeah. Okay. Apostomus.
Crazy.
Fast. Beit HaMikdash is the temple. Beit HaMikdash is the temple. Okay, Apostomus, this was a Greek or Roman soldier. He burned the Torah scroll. Have we looked? This is mourning, like grief, mourning, Pesel.
is it?
Mm-hmm.
Left and not up.
Usually it's down and left in Hebrew. Sorry, and left. Left, from right to left. From right to left. No, not usually diagonal. Not usually diagonal. Give you a tip. Look for the yud. The yud is easy to see, and there are not many yuds. And something left to left and right to left. That top to bottom.
Did anybody get 2 Yerushalayim yet?
I've only got one.
Yeah, I think there's only one, and I think some I also haven't found.
Have we found some?
Have you found some?
I haven't found some.
Yeah, I've been through twice on some, 3 times on the second Yerushalayim, and I don't see it.
The shin.
就是挖这个挖拿这个
Left or down? Left or down?
Oh.
No.
This would be a cruel word search.
Maybe you get that
Most of the words aren't accurate.
if you get 5.
Maybe it's diagonal. You did drop diagonal.
But I go to the letter and I make a circle around it for the next
How
letter.
do you
and
have
it's-
if you do this?
Mm.
Nothing.
Avilut.
It's a trick.
Avilut.
Oh, no, but
Greek.
yes, yeah. Avilut, yeah.
So make a line. Make a line so you can see.
So,
Circle of a line.
Avilut.
so.
I got Tom, but I don't have Tom. Wait, hold on. There's another one here too. It's mixed up with other groups. Start with a tet. The tav. Start with a tav.
Alright.
Oh.
You calling it? You were.
Yeah, unless it's spelled with the final tzadi.
Yeah, everybody get them all?
We got some doubts.
That's some doubts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see. It's spelled with the final tzadi. Some is spelled with the final tzadi.
That's cheating.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's not
Yeah.
Oh, here.
Where? Which letter is it?
Some. We could probably
Just the only some is spelled with the final.
Oh.
But you need a hamster feet.
It has an some feet. It's right below Bein Hamat Mitzarim. It's right below the yud there, at the top.
It's right, sorry.
Mitzrayim,
Yeah. That's.
Okay, the first one, Bein HaMetzarim, is on the top line, right? Bein HaMetzarim is on the top line. Everybody got that? What does that mean? Meitzarim. Meitzarim. What does that mean? Bein HaMetzarim. This is the period we're in. What is the period that we're in?
Between times?
Between the times. Well, Meitzar is not exactly time. That's Bein HaZmanim. That's coming up soon. Right? Bein HaMeitzarim. A Meitzar is a narrow place. Meitzar, it's tzar. Tzar means narrow. Did you ever go buy a shirt in Israel? Sometimes they have the regular size, and sometimes they have tzar. Narrow. Wide versus narrow. Tzar is narrow. Meitzarim are the narrows, the narrow straits. So we're suffering being in a narrow place. You don't have room to move. You don't have room to live. So this 3 weeks are many times called Bein HaMetzarim, because we're between two. What are the two crises or the two difficulties that we're stuck in between the 3 weeks? 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av on either side. So it's like we're stuck between the straits. Bein HaMeitzar is a strait. And the word Mitzrayim, many people make that drasha, that Mitzrayim, for us, the land of Egypt, was in many ways a place where we were forced to be, like in constraints, similar word. Anyways, Bein HaMeitzarim is on the top line. Benjamin, did you circle it? Did you find Bein HaMetzarim on the top line? It's the the fourth letter from the right is Bet, Bein HaMetzarim. And then on the next line underneath it, you say you find Tzom, but with a tzadi sofit. That's not smart. That's not good. We have to
The 3 weeks.
change that.
The second Yerushalayim is kind of funny too.
Really? Next word we have, Yerushalayim. Where do you find Yerushalayim?
It's the 5th line down.
No, but the fourth line, you skipped one. What's on the fourth line? Beit HaMikdash. On the fourth one. Oh, you're going by the list. I understand. I'm going on the picture itself. Beit HaMikdash, and then underneath it you have Yerushalayim. Nothing funny about that.
In the second Yerushalayim, the only way to make it is to take the yud from Beit HaMikdash and then make an L into the other Yerushalayim. There's no other Yerushalayim.
Well, then it's not another Yerushalayim. There's only one Yerushalayim then. There's only one Yerushalayim, yeah. Yerushalayim, there it is on line number 5, right? Ravid, you found it? Perfect. The next word that we find, going from top to bottom? I find apustamus on the 2 lines below Yerushalayim. Apustamus. First letter on the line is Aleph, and from there it goes to the word apustamus, the name of some kind of an evil person who burnt the Sefer Torah. We fasted about him on 17th of Tammuz. Underneath that, find any other words jump out at you? Where do you see Luchot HaBrit? about 3 lines after that. The third line from the bottom is spelled from the beginning of the line, Lamed, Vav, Chet, Vav, Taf, Luchot, which means the tablets, Habrit, of the covenant.
Yes.
Any other words so far?
A person.
There's one on the top to bottom.
There's top to ba. So we've done all the words, I think, that are right to left. I don't see any words popping out at me. Let's go top to bottom. What did you find?
It's Tisha B'Av.
So we spoke about Tom. Tom is the yud underneath the yud in the top line. The second yud in the top line is tzadi. It's a tzadi sofit by mistake. And then a vav and the mem sofit, about the middle of the page.
This is Tzom.
That's Tzom. What other ones you were saying, Zachariah? What'd you find?
So? What? No.
No, I got Tzom. What other one is top to bottom?
Tisha B'Av.
Oh.
Where do you find Tisha B'Av?
On the far right.
Ah. Both Tisha B'Av and Avelut are joined together on the right-hand column, from top to bottom. The second line is Taf. Go down, Tisha B'Av, and then Avelut is using the word Av twice. You spell out, Avelut of course means morning, Mourning. Any others left?
Pesel.
Where's Pesel?
The pay from Apostomus.
That's right. The pay from Apostomus goes down, Pesel. You got that. And I think we got them all, didn't we? Yafeh. All right. It's good to practice your Hebrew and recognize the letters. Now I have a proper copy for you. Everybody, take a look at this Gemara. It's Gemara about the destruction of the temple. I'm sorry, it's a little small. I wanted to get the Hebrew and the English on the same page. But the story is, when the second temple was going to, the background story, you need a magnifying glass, yeah. The background story is the second temple period. There was fighting within the Jews. Another one? Here you go. Here. Oh. You think you have two? Okay. There was fighting between the Jews. As a matter of fact, there's a book, which I'll show you, discusses a whole book, which is a very non-academic, but quite detailed description of the fighting between the names of the leaders, the Jewish leaders. They all had Greek names. We're under the Greek reign from -333 all the way to the Roman era. After the Greek, the two versions of the Greek Empire conquering the land of Israel. First, the Ptolemaic from Egypt, the Egyptian Greeks, and then the Syrian Greeks. The Syrian Greeks, we have the story of Hanukkah. The Syrian Greeks. What are they called? Seleucids, that's right. The Seleucid Greeks. Seleucid, sounds a little bit like Syria. It's easy to remember. I don't know if it's the same word. Seleucidim. Now, he was one of the names of the generals who were in charge of Seleucid. Selvek. In Hebrew, for some reason, they pronounce the C as a hard consonant. And the EU is a Vav, and so Vav, it becomes Selvekim instead of Seleucid, but it's the same word. That's the Greek leader, the Greek leader in Syria, and he took over the land of Israel. Famously, Antiochus made all sorts of prohibitions against the Jewish people, right? That they're not allowed to learn Torah, and they had to bow down to the idols, ultimately leading to the rebellion of the Jews. Was it successful?
No.
It actually was. The Hasmonean rule got rid of the Greek rule over the Jewish people, and we had a measure of independence. The children of Matityahu ben Yochanan, Kohen Gadol, were successful. The few beat off the many. believe it or not, we celebrated on Hanukkah for how many days? 8 days of Hanukkah, and believe it or not, there are 8 battles, 8 famous battles between the Syrian Greek army and the Jewish rebels, and against them we were successful. And we set up a king, Hasmonean kings. There was a dynasty. The problem started when the Jews and the Hasmonean kings started fighting with each other. They said, no, I want to be king. I want to be king. And they started fighting against each other. And at some point they were at a stalemate because the two or more warring camps within the Jews, none of them could succeed against the other. So you know what they started to do? By this time, the Greeks were out of the picture because it was the beginning of the Roman Empire. So they sent some messengers to Rome, and they started tattling on each other. Say, oh, we are kings in Judea and Samaria, Hasmonean kings, but of course we pay tribute to the great Roman Empire. We can't pretend to be independent from you, so we send gifts, and the Romans sent all sorts of ambassadors who were actually in charge. Officially, it was under the Roman Empire, the Hasmonean kings. But then it got even worse. When the Edomians who came up from Edom, right? We mentioned Edom before. There was this nation called the Edomites who were around. At some point, they came and joined the Jewish people. There's a story that one of the sages converted, did a mass conversion of the Edomians. And they sort of joined the Jewish community. And famously, one of the leaders, we've heard mentioned his name 100 times, Herod was a descendant of the Edomian community. So he was sort of Jewish. It was a mass conversion, which we don't do. But the rabbis felt that it was better to have them with us than against us. And so the Romans were sending people to be in charge. What were they called? Roman
Emissaries?
More than emissaries. They were officially in charge of the country. The Jewish kings, I forget what the name right now. Keep trying.
Prefect?
I don't think so.
Consul?
Could be councils. Consul could be something like that. Consul might be a word that works. In any case, at that time, really before the end, one of the Jewish camps, there was a camp by Aristobulus. Sounds like a Jewish name to you? He was a Jew, but they took on Greek names because they were under Greek influence for hundreds of years. And Aristobulus, he tattletaled against Hyrcanus. Sound like a Jewish name to you? He was a Jew. These were the Hasmonean kings. They were family from the tribe of Levi. They were Kohanim. They were a Kohanic tribe. Anyways, they were fighting for control, a lot of political infighting. So much so that I can't remember now if it's Hyrcanus or Aristobulus. There was the first, the second, the third. They called themselves the same names over and over and again. But you can read all about the history of the Second Temple era. And ultimately, because of the infighting, one could not be victorious over the other. So they called in help. They tattletaled to the Romans. And the Romans sent a garrison. A group of soldiers, a large group of soldiers. Much more than was needed if Jews were behaving themselves. And they just sent their yearly tax to the Romans. And the Roman consul in the land, he would take care of business. They didn't need any trouble. Herod built up the land of Israel. He was a great and horrible person, but he was a great builder. And he built famously the Kotel. The walls of the Beit HaMikdash, of the Temple Mount, were redone, renovated by King Herod. Ma'arat HaMachpelah. There's a palace, right? Look outside my window. I see Herodion. This was a palace he had in the desert, just south of Jerusalem, where I lived, right up across from Tekoa. And that's where he was buried as well. We found his burial grave. In any case, amazing fortress, man-made mountain. Those who were at my house saw it. We pointed out to you. It's just before you get to Tekoa. It's on the road. In any case, Herodion, Herod was one of these Roman consuls who were in charge of the land of Israel. Every once in a while, he had guests from Rome that he hosted, and in this Herodian mountain, which is a fortress, which is now an archaeological site. It's actually one of the 100 historic sites of the world. It was recognized internationally as one of the most significant sites in the world. And they have a reconstruction of the theater. He built a theater, a Roman theater, in the heart of the Judean desert, so that the Roman guests could come and be entertained, all of his guests. And we have his palace, and we have where the portico where he would accept people. And there's the Roman-style baths on top of this man-made mountain. There's the hot bath and the cold bath, and then there's steam room. There's a tradition of how the Romans bathed. We have all that, and you can walk and see the remnants and get a wonderful tour of the Herodian. But in other places in Israel, we also have Roman artifacts and archaeology. In any case, Herod was an example of one of those consuls who was in charge of the land of Israel. But there was, at the same time, he sort of kept the Romans at bay. Because if they have their man in Jerusalem, as it were, if they have their man in the land of Israel, who's controlling the Jews? He had lots of slave labor. He was an Edomian more than he was a Jew, probably, and therefore he used the Judeans. He used the Israeli people for whatever his plans were. He wasn't the most benevolent ruler. He killed most of his family because he was afraid that they were going to kill him. Very controversial figure. Anyways, he died, I think, in the year 3 or 4. And then there was another consul in his place, and then another consul in his place. But at this time, the Romans were called in, as I was saying. They wanted peace and quiet. They didn't want any of these too much independence for the Jews. The Great Revolt ended with the destruction of Beit HaMikdash in year 70. The story we're going to learn now from Gittin is the Jewish depiction of what happened at the end of the Great Revolt, when there's a siege around Jerusalem. When did the siege start? Not when the walls were breached. When did the siege start? Which day in the Hebrew calendar do we commemorate the beginning of the siege on Jerusalem? For 3 years. The siege was for 3 years. The Roman legion, we find artifacts from the Roman legion all around Jerusalem. They surrounded Jerusalem. They encamped tens of thousands of soldiers. And they ate there and they lived there for 3 years. And they didn't let anybody in and out of the city of Jerusalem. So we have lots of remnants from their living here for 3 years, at least. And of course they stayed afterwards and they came before. But the siege lasted for, what day of the year do we commemorate the siege of Jerusalem, where no more Jews are allowed in, no more goods are in and out? It's one of the 4 days that we fast on for the destruction. It led up to the destruction of the temple. So we all know, we know 2 out of the 4 days are the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av. We're now between those 2. We're in Bein HaMetzarim, right? We're between the straits. We're within the 3-week period, which is the headquarters of when we talk about Jerusalem. But there's 2 other dates during the calendar year that we commemorate this destruction. What are those 2 dates? Who remembers? Asara B'Tevet is number 1. That's the day we commemorate the beginning of the siege. The 10th of Tevet. When is Tevet? So we have Nisani Al Sivan, Tammuz, Av, the 4th and the 5th month. Tammuz Av. That's what we're in now. So we commemorate the destruction primarily in the 4th and the 5th month. Tammuz Av. But when's Tevet? Tammuz Av, Elul, Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev, Tevet. It's the 10th of the 10th. The 10th of Tevet. The 10th of the 10th month. So we're now in 4th and 5th month. We have to wait almost half a year till we get to the 10th of Tevet. But in the middle of the winter, Tevet is winter time. Kislev, Tevet. Kislev is Chanukah. Chanukah is in Kislev. And towards the end of Kislev, spilling over to the beginning of Tevet. So at the beginning of Tevet, we've got this celebration of Chanukah, and the 10th, we have a fast day, the 10th of Tevet. Anyways, that's sort of a lone day commemorating the temple in the middle, like half a year after, basically. So we shouldn't forget the temple for the entire year until next summer. We have in the middle a reminder. And then, of course, there's the 4th day of the fasts, which is the 4th? The 3rd of Tishrei, known as Tzom Gedalia. Very good. Okay, that's commemorating the end of the first temple era. But 10th of Tevet is when the siege started. So at this siege, for 3 years, we have a rabbinic tradition about what was going on between the Jews, and it's sort of emblematic of the fighting between the Jews, and it really teaches us about what's the next stage after the temple is destroyed. Who remembers, by the way, Ravid and Shmuel and the Yov were not there, and Benjamin. I developed my 7 periods of Jewish history, right? What did I describe it as?
Smile.
The face of Judaism, right? The smile of Judaism. So we have 7. There's the 2 eyes are the 2 Batei Mikdash, right? First and second temple, right? But we also have 2 ears. Before the first temple era, there's the era of the foundations, right? Where we came out of Egypt and the forefathers and Sinai. So this is the first ear. We heard the word of God on Sinai, so it's an ear, right? Yeah, and then we saw God in the Beit HaMikdash. We could see Him. We went there to see and be seen. There's a mitzvah to go up to the Beit HaMikdash, so it's associated with an eye. So we're going across the face. First period, second period, third period, and the second year, and there's the 4th period after the second Beit HaMikdash is destroyed, is the period where we heard the oral Torah. The oral Torah gets developed, the period of Chazal, exactly. The period of Chazal is right after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. So what this story that we're going to study now, from the Gemara in Gittin, page 56, as it says on the top of your page, Nun Vav stands for 56. Gittin, Nun Vav, it's one of the tractates of the Talmud, and it has this story. It describes the transition from the temple era, where Jerusalem is at the center of everything, until the period of from the second eye to the second ear, the period of the sages. And this is the sages telling the story. So they're describing to them this transition from a Judaism which was centered around Jerusalem and the temple, the eyes, to a Judaism that's connected to the ears, connected to the sages being in charge instead of the prophets. Prophets see with their eyes. Chazon Yeshayahu, Shabbat Chazon, next Shabbat is going to be a week. Next Shabbat is going to be Shabbat Chazon. No, 2 weeks? 2 weeks. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks is going to be Shabbat Chazon. Chazon means to see. So the prophets see. So there's prophecy during the first, and a little bit the second temple period. But there's no more prophecy anymore. Now it's the sages. It's about learning. Learning you do with your ears. And just to finish off the periods, one nostril, other nostril on the mouth. Geonim, Rishonim, Acharonim. Our job? To smile. Right, we have to make the Jewish face smile. Okay? This Jewish tradition has a history, but how we learn it, how we study it, how we live it makes all the difference. It's not just some history book. Okay, you smiling, Ravid? You got it now? 2 eyes, 2 ears, the nose and the mouth. Let's learn the Midrash. The Biryoni were then in the city. Biryoni. Bullies. That's right. Where did you learn that from? You just knew that? In modern Hebrew, the word Biryonim is used for bullies. So there was bullies, ruffians, sometimes they're translated it. Basically, this is in Jerusalem. We're entering Jerusalem about year 70 the year of the destruction of the temple. Okay? In the city, they're under siege from the 10th of Tevet. And in the city's pretty big. The entire city of Jerusalem is pretty big. They had houses, and they had cattle, and they had places where they met, and they had the Beit HaMikdash and the chambers of the Beit HaMikdash. We know it's a very big structure. Herod had built it up, right? Herod had built it up. It looks the parameters of the Temple Mount that we see today. So that Jerusalem was including the Temple Mount, but also outside of the walls of the Temple Mount. So it's a very big area. It was all under siege. Can you imagine today, if you close off the highway to Jerusalem, highway number 1, and you close off the entry to Jerusalem from the south, and you close off all the entries, all the people of Jerusalem under siege. The Biryonim were then in the city. Okay, Shmuel, you read for me?
The rabbi said to them, "Let us go out and make peace with them," the Romans. They would not let them, but on the contrary said, "Let us go out and fight them."
What do we have here? A machloket. There were two groups of leadership. The rabbis on one side, and these ruffians on the other side. Who wrote the story? Obviously the rabbis. The rabbis are the good guys here, okay? We're going to see it's not so simple, but there was the rabbis who wanted, what did they say their approach was? What was their political? Would you call them left or right? They would be the leftists. The rabbis were the leftists. And these ruffians, the bullies, they were the kahana chai. Let's go out and fight them, right? They wanted to fight the Romans. Yeah, okay, well, I hope not, but we're going to see that, listen, you have to understand the context. This was after 3 years of siege. There's no hope. The Roman legions have been sent to Jerusalem. It's the greatest superpower in the world. And there are a few rebels within the city of Jerusalem. So their walls are holding the fort for a little while, for even a year, even 2 years, but now we're at the end of 3 years. The rabbis say, listen, you got to know when you're knocking your head against the brick wall. You're not going to get very far if you knock your head against the brick wall. What's going to happen?
Smash your head.
You smash your head. And the brick wall might stay. Whether it's a bricks of Jerusalem wall or any kind, there's a time when you have to perhaps negotiate. So that's what they wanted to do. Let's go out and make peace. What would you gain from making peace with the Romans?
Terms.
What kind of terms would you able to ask for? Eob, what would you ask for? Steve, what would you ask for if you were a rabbi under siege 3 years, the Roman legions outside surrounding you? What would you try to gain through negotiation? Food. Good, one answer. What else? Land. Well, you want to have access to the land so that you could... Okay, what else?
Protection.
Peace, protection.
Come together, Korbanos.
Hey, they're getting closer. The major issue here is the temple, Jerusalem. We had independence for about a couple hundred years. We are in charge of the land, and we have a Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash is at the center of the world. Beit HaMikdash is the center of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the center of the world. Beit HaMikdash is in the center. The rabbi's primary concern should be the Beit HaMikdash. We're going to see that that's not true. The rabbi who ran the show here, he actually, I'm going to tell you, you might have read the story before. He did manage to go negotiate, and he didn't ask for the temple to be saved. Ooh. Until today, in the Talmud, even though he's portrayed as the hero of the story, there's a debate. Some rabbis say he should have asked for the Beit HaMikdash, not to be destroyed. We're going to see what he did ask for. Does anybody know what he asked for? Not just because you read it now at the end.
Ask for money.
No, he didn't ask for money. He asked for 3 things. It's such a fairy tale. It's amazing. He asked for 3. You get 3 wishes, right? We're going to see what happened. I don't want to give away the end. But he did not ask for the Beit HaMikdash. And in the end, we know the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. Some people say it's his fault, even though he's the leader of the heroes here. Anyways, let's read the story. Shmuel, start from the beginning, very loud, please.
The Biryonim were then in the city. The rabbi said to them, "Let us go out and make peace with them, the Romans." They would not let them, but on the contrary said, "Let us go out and fight them." The rabbi said, "You will not succeed." Then they rose up and burnt the stores of wheat and barley, so that a famine ensued.
Stop again. What happened?
Craziness.
What happened? What did these bullies do?
They started sacrificing themselves. I mean, they were destroying their.
Right. I guess the rabbis had their storehouses of food. They didn't want them to have power. And wow, do you think did the rabbis maybe do the same to the ruffians? We don't know.
Jeez.
But everybody was fighting. They were fighting each other and burning their own storehouses of food. If you don't have food, then the end is even closer. Now even the bullies should realize that, okay, if you don't have food, you got to negotiate unless you want to just stay there and die from starvation. All right, so this is what our sages tell us, that the second temple was destroyed because of what reason? Sinat chinam, baseless hatred, infighting between the Jews. That's right. So why we focus on so much? The destruction, literally, according to this story, was hastened by the Jews burning up their other Jews' food. And so there was famines. And now we're going to, by the way, on Tisha B'Av, we read parts of this description or poetic descriptions of what it was like. And there was famine. There was famine. When there's famine, terrible things happen into the community. So let's take an example of the famine, the horrible, horrible famine. This is mentioned in our kinot on Tisha B'Av. We sit on the ground all day and we read these lamentations, these poetic versions of what happened in the destruction. This story of Martha is referred to. Who was Martha? Martha, she's called in the Talmud. Martha is the English. Martha was the daughter of Baitus. Baitus? Ring a bell? What does it sound like? What kind of name is it?
Roman?
I think it's Greek. Greek also. They're all Greek names. The Romans just started to be influencing the Jewish people. It was Martha ben Baitos. She was a very rich woman, one of the richest women in Jerusalem. Okay, Yosef, want to read for us? She sent her man, about line 7. This is a little bit to tell you what was going on in Jerusalem at the time. The richest woman sent one of her agents, her buyers.
They then rose up and burned the stores of wheat. Martha, the daughter of Boethus, was one of the richest women in Jerusalem. She sent her man servant out, saying, "Go and bring me some fine flour." By the time he went in, it was sold out.
There was no more flour. Okay, go ahead.
He came and told her, "There is no fine flour, but there is white flour." She then said to him, "Go and bring me some." By the time he went, he found the white flour sold out.
Oh
He
my
came
gosh.
and told her, "There is no white flour, but there is dark flour." She said to him, "Go and bring me some." By the time he went in, it was sold out. He returned and said to her, "There is no dark flour, but there is a barley flour." She said, "Go and bring me some." By the time he went, this was also sold out. She had taken off her.
Stop there for a second. So this is an inferior grade. This rich woman, she was used to having only the top quality produce, top quality flour to bake her breads with. And none, as you can see, a very quick process of everything running out. And what's this rich woman going to do? It reminds me of another rich woman
She had taken
who didn't have bread. Didn't have bread to eat, right? What'd she say? Let them eat cake. Marie Antoinette. She was so disconnected from what's going on in the city that she thought, someone came and said to them, the people don't have bread to eat. So she said, well, let them eat cake. She didn't know that it meant that if there's no bread, there's no cake, there's no food to eat, there's no flour. She was so disconnected. So this Martha is a similar, perhaps the original Marie Antoinette. She said, okay, if you can't get me the top grade, get me the second tier. Okay, there's no more of the second tier. Wow. I can't get any caviar. So buy me some roast beef. Can't get any roast beef, so buy me some chicken. You can't get me any chicken? All right, so buy me some what?
Bread.
Some bread, yeah, some potatoes maybe. There was nothing to eat. And this is the description of how maybe also it's a little bit of a disconnect between the royalty, the rich people, and the poor people. She was so disconnected, she didn't realize that it was over. So what happened next? So she decided to go out. She left her, what's it called, the ivory tower? She left her palace, her famous, her place of riches and comfort, and she decided to go out for herself because she was not getting delivery. The Walt people were on strike. There was no delivery. The delivery guy was not succeeding. He kept on failing. So she goes out herself. What happens? Go ahead.
She had taken off her shoes, but she said, I will go out and see if I can find anything to eat. Sandal stuck on her foot, and she died.
Wow. This was a finicky, spoiled woman. She was not used to having anything disgusting. So she fainted when she stepped with her bare foot into dung. And she fainted and died. Wow. Do you think this is a historical account of what happened to a woman called Martha? Could be. But what does it tell you? What does it tell you?
Situation. It means like the direness of the situation. Like, it doesn't matter how much you have or anything. You can't. There's nothing left.
Nothing to eat. And not only that, it was such a come down for her that the gap was so large between the riches they were used to and Jerusalem was the center. Jerusalem was a rich city. All the best was brought to Jerusalem. And there were aristocracy. There was Jewish aristocracy. And they couldn't handle the come down. Very hard, very harsh things happened in the city of Jerusalem. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Here's our hero. Okay, go ahead, Yosef. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai.
Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai applied to her the verse, the tender and delicate woman among you which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground. Some report that she ate a fig left by Rav Zadok and became sick and died.
Oh, here we have another figure. Wait, there's two rabbis here. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, we're talking about year 70, right? So this is known as the foundation of the Tannaitic period, the first of the sages. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai created the next period, called the period of the sages. We're going to see how. There was another rabbi at the time, whose name was Rabbi Tzadok. What did Rabbi Tzadok do?
For Rav Zadok,
One second. What did Rabbi Tzadok do? Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, he writes. Yeah, go ahead, Yosef. Rabbi Tzadok observed.
Rav Zadok observed fast for 40 years in order that Jerusalem might not be destroyed. And he became so thin that when he ate anything, the food could be seen as it passed through his throat. When he wanted to restore himself, they used to bring him a fig, and he used to suck the juice and throw the rest away.
Stop there. So some say, how did this woman, Martha, die? Not that she stepped in dung, but that she actually ate a fig that was left over from Rabbi Tzadok's meal. Rabbi Tzadok's meal, what did they say? They soaked the fig, and he only ate the juice. So it's like a leftover remnants of a fig, and that made her sick and died. For him, it was medicine, but for her, that she was just so used to higher quality food than some leftover fig that was been soaked and sort of all the juice had been taken out of it. Rabbi Tzadok fasted for 40 years so that Yerushalayim will not be destroyed. People knew the end was coming. It's year 70, right? So from a year around 30 to 70, he fasted. Also this, do you think he fasted for 40 years?
I don't think it's possible.
It's not possible. Maybe he ate a little bit of a fig. Maybe he ate some fig juice.
Maybe he did like a daytime fast.
Maybe he did a daytime fast. Give me another explanation. Ravid, give me another explanation. Rabbi Tzadok fasted for 40 years. What does that mean to you?
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
He ate only on Shabbat.
Maybe he ate only Shabbat. He fasted for 40 years. What are they trying to tell us?
Maybe he fasted like in the evening, in the morning, and
Maybe. You're not getting it. I'm hinting to you over and over again. I'll give you a fourth time. I'm going to say it. 40. 40 is a very significant number. Not only Moshe.
40 days.
40 days is a significant period by Moshe. What else do we know 40?
40 years of transition.
40 years in the desert. What else did you say?
Transition.
It represents transition. There's 40 days of the Mabul. The flood was for 40 days. The spies went to Israel for 40 days. 40 is a symbolic number throughout the rabbinic literature and the Tanakh primarily. So when it says that he fasted for 40 years, do we calculate, okay, 30 to 70, that's when he fasted? Or do we say to ourselves, what does it mean that he fasted for 40 years? This is a transition period of the end of the temple era. And Rabbi Tzadok is trying to stave off this final destruction. He fasted for 40 years. It means for a significant period. This was his life. His life was, Rabbi Tzadok was associated with trying to keep the temple alive. Kind of the temple going. The temple life, the Judaism surrounded around was around the temple. He was trying to keep that alive. This Rabbi Tzadok represents that. His whole life represents trying to keep the temple alive. 40 years he fasted, so it shouldn't happen. So the destruction shouldn't happen. Okay. In any case, whatever she ate, she died. Whatever she stepped in, she died. And then, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai applied a verse to her. It's a verse from. Anybody recognize where the verse is from? The tender and the delicate women among you, which would not adventure to set the sole of her foot upon the ground. Where does it say that? Nope.
No, in the Torah.
In the Torah, where?
It says, if you're not following my commandments, you will eat your children. And
Excellent. There's a section of the Torah, it appears twice in the Torah, actually. It's called the tochecha, the rebuke, or the horrible things that are going to happen to you if you don't keep the Torah. There's one in Parashat Kitavo, in the book of Dvarim, and there's another one in Parashat Bechukotai, the book of Vayikra. Okay? So, in both places, I forget which one this verse is from, it describes the terrible destruction which is going to come upon the Jewish people, and Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai said, hey, I recognize that there's some delicate woman who's not used to putting her foot upon the ground. He's placing this period of the destruction of Jerusalem as the fulfillment of the prophetic psukim in the Torah, that bad things are going to happen to you if you don't keep the mitzvot. Keep going. When Martha was about to die,
when Martha was about to die, she brought out all her gold and silver and threw it in the street, saying, what is the good of this to me? Thus giving effect to the verse, they shall cast their silver in the streets.
Cast their silver in the streets is from a pasuk from Yechezkel. But I guess similarly, the same idea. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai is telling us that, oh no, the prophecy about the rebuke, about the destruction is going to happen, as it was, the pasuk is from Parshat Kitavo in Dvarim. You're correct. I know that because in the Hebrew text, which is just at the top of your page, there's footnotes. And you can see in between the margin between the Gemara and the Rashi, which is on the far right-hand column, There's in the margin there tiny little letters. It's in Rashi script. The first one says Dvarim Kafchet. Second one says Yechezkel Zayin. That's the chapter 28 in Dvarim, and the second one's from Yechezkel chapter 7 Zayin. So that's how I knew, even though I didn't remember the pasuk. I had a little cheat. I looked at the small Hebrew letters at the top of the page. Okay, so how do we get out of this mess? I don't know if we'll finish it today, but we'll try. Abba Sikra. Eov, we read for us the continuing of the story?
Abba Sikra, the head of Yoni in Yerushalayim, was the son of the sister of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai.
As usual, family connections save the day. Do you understand what was going on? The inner fighting between the hatred of brothers. Rabbi Yochanan Zakkai was? He was the uncle of Abba Sikra. Abba Sikra was the name of the head of the ruffians, and he was the nephew of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai says, we got to do something. People are starving in the streets. Like Martha, there must have been many others. There's no more flour to be bought. If there's no more flour, there's no more bread. You're there, we're all going to die. So he says, okay, I got to get, this is the argument between the Biryonim, the right and the left. There was a time for that. They argued, but now this is the end. Even the ruffians should be able to see that we're just all going to die here. So he says, okay, I'm gonna turn to my relative. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sent to him, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai sent to him saying, go ahead.
Come to visit me privately. When he came, he said to him, how long are you going to carry on in this way and kill all the people with starvation? He replied, what can I do? If I say a word to them, they will kill me.
Stop there. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai has a clandestine encounter with Abba Sikra. Can you imagine it? In the dark of the night, and a cloak covering his face so that nobody would recognize him. The leader of the ruffians shows up at the rabbi's house. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was the leader of the... Why is he called Rabban? Anybody know? Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai? Most rabbis are called Rabbi or Rav. What's this Rabban? It's a special title for the president, right? There was a Nasi, usually it's translated as prince or president. But we talked about Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi. He was a great grandson. He was the president about 5 generations after Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai is a title. He was the head of the Jewish community. He calls his nephew over, he comes, a clandestine meeting, and he says, come on, you're not, how long is this going to go on for? What did he say to him? What can I do? If I say a word to them, who's them? They will kill me. The ruffians, these bullies. His own group. He says, I don't have any control over them anymore. They're bullies. I know it's nonsensical already. There's no food to eat. But what am I going to do? So now he's already on the same team with Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. So Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, okay, he was smart. He didn't get to be the president of the rabbis for nothing. He says, I got a plan.
He said, devise some plan for me to escape. Perhaps I shall be able to save anything. He said to him, pretend to be ill.
Actually, seems like it was the idea of Abba Sikra. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai was saying, I need to get out to speak to the Romans. How am I going to get out? Devise a plan. You're the tactician. You're the man who knows the underground. You should be able to sneak me out to meet the Romans. So he says, yes, I have a plan. He came up with a plan. What's the plan?
He said to him, pretend to be ill and let everyone come to inquire about you. Bring something evil smelling and put it by you so that they will say you're dead. Let then your disciples get under your bed, but no others, so that they shall not notice that you're still light, since they know that a living being is lighter than a corpse. He said so.
He did so.
He did so. And Rabbi Eliezer went under the bear from one side and Rabbi Joshua from the other.
Okay, stop there. So, what's the plan? Anybody know? Figure it out?
Pretend to be dead.
Foul smelling, put something.
Pretend to be dead. Say you're sick, so it shouldn't come as a sudden thing. Everybody will figure it out. It sounds like they were suspicious. This was an ideological war. They were protesting in the street. The ruffians were everywhere. They're not going to let the rabbi go out. Even if their leader tells them to let them, they wouldn't listen to him. So pretend you're sick. Everybody will talk about it. Oh, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, please pray for Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Can you imagine? They gathered in the Beit Midrash saying Tehillim. Oy vavoy, the great rabbi is sick. And then the word comes out, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai died. And they're tearing their shirts. And the bullies are suspicious. Because what does that mean if you're dead? What happens next?
Buried.
You have to be buried. Where do you bury people? You don't bury in Jerusalem. It's to be taken out. So the Romans let them take out their dead. Because, okay, the dead Jews we don't care about. Let them go out. They want to protect their city. There's no cemetery in the city of Jerusalem. You have to go on the outskirts. So the bullies were suspicious here. They didn't want anybody to leave, especially not Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. They convinced them that they were dead by making something smelly. If you leave a body for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days in the heat of the summer, it'll get smelly. And so now they took out the coffin and they tried to get by the bullies. But what's the problem? And why does Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, the two students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, why do they have to carry the coffin?
So they know it's.
Has anybody here carried a coffin? Has anybody here had the mitzvah of carrying? Here in Israel, it's a stretcher. It's not a coffin. Many times I've been involved in that mitzvah of carrying the dead. Very heavy, extremely heavy. When a person is alive, however many kilos you weigh, maybe double it after the soul leaves. It's crazy, but it's true.
Scientific fact.
Yeah,
Body's heavier.
body's heavier. Body gets heavier. I don't know why either. Because all the liquids remain inside.
The coffin's heavy, but
No. The body's heavier. The body feels heavier. So they figured if some of the people who are not in the inside, if they're not faithful to this trick, to this plan, if they carry the body, they'll say, "Hey, he doesn't feel like he's dead. he's just maybe he's still ill. Maybe there's something tricky going on." So he said, "Only your students are going to carry the coffin." Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, I guess they were told on the secret. They knew that he wasn't really dead. They were on the inside of this ruse, and that's what they did. Okay, everybody with me? They get to the gates of the city. There's the ruffians. They're the bullies standing there on guard. And he said, "Well, what's going on here?" And they said, "Well, Rabbi Yochanan died, and we're taking him out." "Oh yeah," they said. "Go ahead, Eov."
Some men wanted to put a lance through the building.
We don't believe you that he's dead. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to stab the body. We're going to stab through the coffin to make sure that he's really dead. Otherwise, we don't want to let you out. We know that leftist rabbi is going to sell us. He's going to make peace with the Romans. We're fighting the Romans. The great revolt. We don't want the Roman Empire to succeed. So they don't want to let the rabbi out. So he says, let's stab him. What happened?
He said to them, "Shall the Romans say they have pierced their master? They wanted to give it a push." He said to them, "Shall they say that they pushed their master? They opened the town gate for him and he got up."
Oh, okay. So they convinced them, even the ruffians, even the bullies were not going to give up on the honor of the Jew. They're going to say, "Oh, this is how the Jews treat their leaders. They stab the corpse. They push it around." So they forced them because even though they were against the rabbis, they still had a lot of Jewish pride. You can imagine until today. Some people may not be lettered, they may be ruffians, but they're very proud Jews. They're very proud of, and they want to uphold the honor and the dignity of the Jews. So they were convinced, they got out. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai's coffin is carried out by his sages. They turn the band, and what do they do? Jumps out of the coffin, and he goes straight to the head of the Roman camp, the Roman garrison, the Roman legion, which is surrounding the city for 3 years. Okay, we're gonna read more about this tomorrow because we're not gonna finish. We're in the middle of the suspense. What's Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai gonna do? Is he gonna save Jerusalem? What's he gonna ask for? If you want, you can read ahead. If you want, you can watch the video. Stephen put it into the group chat a week or two ago. That's a movie that was recently made about telling this story, or part of this story, and some a little bit before, a little bit after. It's a version of the story, but it's based on this Gemara, on this midrash that we're reading now, line by line, because the sages are giving us messages, whether it's 40 years, whether it's quoting a verse from the Tochacha, from the rebuke, all these, whether it's describing the different stages of fine flour. By the way, what did we speak about on the guys who were on the tour? We saw a place where it's called the Beit Bad, where they pressed olives. And I described to you that there's different quality of olive oil from one stage of the press to the second stage of the press, third stage. So when it came to the Beit HaMikdash, there were rules. You only had to have the finest quality. We have a similar thing when it comes to the quality of the flour used in the Beit HaMikdash. Only the finest flour was used for some offerings. And I think that's why this midrash is talking about, I want the finest flour, and then I want a regular flour. But wheat flour, no, there's no more wheat flour, there's barley flour. There was a korban from barley flour as well. Right? So I think that parallel, it's not necessarily telling us exactly what happened historically, what Martha asked for, and what the different stages of the market getting emptied out from all the food. But it's telling us there's no more hope for offerings in the temple. We don't have this type of fine flour necessary for the temple. So we're reading this midrash. The midrash is so laden, like we did. By the way, the midrash that Rabbi Michael taught on the trip is from the page before this. And this happens to be the page of the Daf Yomi cycle being read today.
Wow!
Yeah.
That's really cool.
That said, you are learning the same story that every Jew around the world who studies in this cycle of studying the Talmud 1 page a day is studying today. And if it's not today, it's tomorrow, and that's why we're going to continue the story tomorrow. Okay? And we'll discuss it further. So you guys have all become Talmudic scholars. Today we studied a passage from the Talmud. It's a midrash that's sort of like a description, a story in the Talmud. Midrash is sometimes outside of the Talmud. There's a version that's in a collection called the Collection of Midrash. But the Talmud, as we said many times, the Talmud includes both halachic discussions, halacha, and Agadah. And that's the name of this movie. Agadat HaChurban. Agadah means the story of the destruction. This is an Agadic section of the Talmud in the Gemara. There's before and after it, there's halachic sections. The Talmud is a mix of halacha and Agadah. It's not all legal stuff.
And what is it, Gittin?
Gittin. Gittin is about the laws of divorce. Get. You have to give a get. So the laws of, and page 56 of the tractate, which talks about the laws of divorce. And in the middle of that tractate, there's a few pages about the destruction, telling the story of the destruction of the Second Temple. It actually makes sense, perhaps, thematically.
Okay.
Right? What's a divorce?
Separation.
Separation of God and the Jewish people. He's leaving us. The temple is being destroyed. It's actually quite telling that these stories about the destruction, this Agadic This is an agadic part of the tractate of Tittim. Seder, we're going to continue to the story tomorrow.
Bravo.